Firstly, it's my sad duty to advise you, for those who don't already know, of the sad death of Councillor John Marshall, former Councillor John Marshall, who was for a long time chair of the Planning Committee in Torfaen, and I'd ask now that we all stand as a mark of respect. Right. Welcome to the March meeting of the Planning Committee. For those of you who aren't familiar with the premises, and there's at least a couple of you at the back, the fire exits are marked. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, then please make use of those exits. The meeting today will be conducted in English, since there has been no request to conduct it at any part in Welsh. We are not, everybody needs to be aware that we are being webcast, is the technical term, i.e. at any time you could be caught on the camera, whether you are, and anything you say may be caught on the record, as it were. So for that purpose, if you need a photographic record, then that one is available through the Council's website, and for that reason we don't allow other cameras to be used during this meeting. I've said the meeting will be conducted in English. I think that's probably everything I need to do, except to do the intros. I'm Brian Borby, I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. On my left, Richard Lewis, who's the Head of Development Control or something like that, Development Manager. Next to him anyway is Paul Wielden, who's the Head of Highways and Transport. Norman Jones over there is a Senior Planner, Team Leader. On my right is Rachel Beale, who's Clerk to the Committee, and on her right is Tim James, who's the, I think still technically the Assistant Chief Legal Officer. That'll do, that's fine. Who will give us legal advice as need be. Are there any apologies, please?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Ron Burnett, Nigel Davis and Wayne Tomlinson.
Are there any other apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Len Constant.
Okay, declarations of interest. Tim, please.
Thank you, Chair. A few declarations I'm aware of. Firstly, Councillor Parish, in relation to 4 of the items on the agenda today, namely item 4, item 6, item 7 and item 8, in relation to each of those applications, Pontypool Community Council were consultees, and on that basis I understand you wish to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest. Is that correct, Councillor Parish?
That is correct.
Thank you. And then Councillor Taylor, I believe you're in the same position in relation to those 4 applications, 4, 6, 7 and 8. You would wish to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. And then Councillor Powell, application 5 on the agenda, in relation to an application at Coed Eva, Cwmbran Community Council were consulted in relation to that, and therefore I understand you wish to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest. Is that correct, Councillor Powell?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. And Councillor Ashley, I believe you wish to declare a personal non-prejudicial interest in relation to the same matter for the same reasons. Is that correct, please?
That is correct as well.
Thank you very much. Any other matters members want to ask me about in relation to declarations? That being the case, I'll just remind you, I'll pass the attendance register around now and that you enter the relevant declarations within that at the appropriate point, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on then to agenda item. Oh, sorry. Councillor Taylor.
Chair, for the interest of people on webcam, you didn't introduce the officer in front, so...
Well, I will do that when we get to her item. Thank you. But it's Claire Hall, who's the planning officer. And now I've done it, so I won't do it again. Item 3, anyway. The minutes of the last meeting held on the 14th of February. Go through for accuracy, please. Page 3. Page 4. 5. And 6. Are you happy they are a true record of the meeting? All those please show. Yes, that's proposed by Councillor Wade, seconded by Councillor Parish. I'm going to vary the agenda now in order to allow our visitors to deal with their particular item, which is item 8. The proposed installation of a telecommunications pole, etc., at the land at Hanbury Lane off Woodfield Road in Ewing, on which we have a speaker. But I'm going to start off with asking Claire if you would present as much as you want to in respect of this particular proposal.
Thank you, Chair. Just some late correspondence items to report to members. You'll see there's reference to a reconsultation exercise we did on page 54 of the report. We've received a further 7 letters of objection from third parties, all objecting to the application for similar reasons as already summarised in the report. Particularly prevalent is the issue of proximity to the school and potential detrimental harm to children. In addition, we've had a copy of an email from the chair of Newin Community Group that was sent to both Lynn Neagle, the Assembly member, and to the Director of Education, Dermot McChrystal. And their response to that email of objection, the Head of Education Services has said applications of this nature are considered by the Planning Committee in accordance with the appropriate regulations and guidance. Any concerns you have should be directed to the committee within the specified timescales for their consideration. I can confirm my office did write to the school making them aware of this application in November last year. It is for the head teacher and governing body if they wish to make a submission to the Planning Committee should they have concerns. The Education Service will not be making a representation in this instance. And in response, the Lynn Eagle Assembly member has said, it has been a while since I have dealt with such an application, but you will recall the concerns that I have expressed previously in the Senedd about the siting of such masts near to schools and areas where children play. Given the proximity of this proposed mast to the local school sports pitch, I would be grateful if you could register my objection to this application. And that's the only updates to the report.
Okay, thank you, Claire. The Speaker, Mr Barker, if you could care to come into the chamber and give your reasons for your objection, please. Make yourself comfortable. That you have 5 minutes, which is timed.
Yeah.
And we police that pretty strictly through Mr. James there. So when I say go, that's when he'll start.
Thank you very much. So my name's Steve Barker. I've been a Newin resident For over 30 years, I've raised my family in New Inn, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the 260 plus residents who signed a petition against this mast. I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on their behalf. The basis for our objection is on various grounds, which we believe the applicant and the planning authority need to clarify and consider. These have been laid out in great detail in the objections submitted, and my presentation today is to summarise these objections and alternatives. So I'm speaking formally on behalf of those residents. So we pose these questions. Has the developer considered the coverage already in New Inn? The supporting data from their website shows good coverage, far greater than the government minimum required. We would also point the fact that the developer has included a press article from BBC News, Wales Behind England on tackling mobile not spots. I'd like to remind the committee that a not spot, according to Ofcom, is no signal at all, and this is not the case for the parish we live in, and therefore must be seen and construed as to mislead the residents, and perhaps this committee. We note from the revised application that a new coverage map is now different from their website. Again, confusing. Also, there is an appeal decision included from the Planning Inspectorate with regard to St Matthew's C of E school in Cumbria. This decision is solely in regard to the installation of an aerial on the school premises for internet access, and therefore I would say to you respectfully, this decision has no bearing on the current application. Why has this site been selected? The application has not considered sharing masts with other providers, even though there are at least 3 masts in the local area with very good line of sight, and with the infrastructure already in place. This mast, proposed mast, seems to ignore the coverage of rural residents in the parish. Again, you'll be aware that's a government policy to ensure they're provided for, and seems to concentrate just on the mass of New Inn itself. It would appear these alternative sites have not been fully explored, and these have been documented in the objections. It also appears that the revised application does not take into account recent events within the parish. For example, one of the sites, Maben Hire Limited, is now empty and seeking a new owner, and that's one of the sites that they discounted because it was occupied. This is a surprise and demonstrates to us the developer is not investigating alternative sites that are now becoming available. We're also concerned about the latest application with the inclusion of a drawing of New Inn search area. The original application had no such drawing and was for the coverage of South Pontypool. The new application shows a small oval about a third of the size of New Inn, with its centre strangely at the proposed new site. Again, to us this seems both very convenient and very confusing. I think critically to us, the applicant has submitted a traffic light rating form, a sort of risk assessment. It clearly demonstrates that the site scores the maximum negative scores in virtually all areas. It confirms the site is close to residential properties, a school, and has high environmental impact. It confirms the 15-metre monopole will be visible in many areas. And from a planning perspective, it confirms that this is a high-risk site. The original and current plans, which you can see before you, admit to say that that's the school playing field. And in fact, that's the school, the plan you had up originally. Again, which is misleading to residents.
30 further seconds, Mr. Barker, okay?
Yeah. Thirdly, we would talk about visual impact and loss of amenities. The site proposed is basically a not very well developed brownfield site. It's all low level, as you can see from the pictures, and as you can see, the highest thing there is a wooden telegraph pole. So when the applicant says this will fit in with the street furniture, that is incorrect. There is nothing approaching 15 metres in that area. I mean, the only two natural, the tree there, the oak tree and the eucalyptus tree. In the plan, they say the oak tree is 13.4 metres. We've had that tree independently measured, and it, in fact, under 10 metres. Again, trying to mislead us, we believe.
Mr. Barker, I'm afraid.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you. The agent for the applicant has been invited to attend and to been given the opportunity to respond to what the Speaker has said, but has chosen not to attend. One question I want to ask before I throw it open for discussion is, in terms of the location of the proposed mast, how far away is it from the school grounds? Roughly?
Sorry,
is it
sorry,
that thing
Chair.
in the middle of the...
It's that little rectangle in the middle, and the area immediately next to it to the right is the school playing pitch. No, that one is a rugby pitch. And the school is just off the picture there. But it is actually school premise.
And what's the distance from the mast proposed to the actual opening of the school gates,
Okay, let me just check that for you, Chair.
roughly?
Sorry, from the mast to the nearest building. It's in the region of 175 metres.
That's the nearest building of...
The nearest school building, sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Right, thank you. Okay. Members, over to you now for discussion. Are there any comments or questions, please? Councillor Siebel.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Speaker for his comments, which I have noted. One of the things that does concern me is that there are 3 other masts within New Inn, and one of these is actually redundant. Why not relocate this site over to that redundant mast site, so that these school children would not, and the people playing on the fields would not be subjected to any harmful rays or whatever that's coming off. With the mobile phones, it's always been a bone of contention when they are set in these masts, but the way that they have actually or the mobile phones has developed, we don't know exactly what is being emitted from them or from these masts. And I don't think I can actually support this application, Chair, not with the amount of signatures and the amount of objections that have been submitted. So therefore, I would not be submitting or supporting this application, Chair.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that I know this area, and if I understand it to be correct, it's a football pitch right on the side of there, where football is played. And I think there's also an area where there's tennis or some swings just a little bit lower down, which would which wouldn't be 50 or 60 yards away. I am concerned that of the proposal to develop it there. I'm sure that there are other places around the Newen area where they could probably put this this mast that wouldn't involve too many people.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Likewise, I note Mr Parker's concerns. One of the things that I wanted to ask, and has been picked up by the representations received, whether there was an actual environment impact assessment taking place.
No, there wasn't, Chair. There was no environmental impact assessment undertaken for this project.
Can I come back in, Chair, on that subject? Was there a need not to have an impact assessment?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as is mentioned in the report, it would not ordinarily be something that we would ask for an environmental impact assessment for development of this scale. You know, it's not of a scale that we would deem that it would require that level of scrutiny and that level of information to be provided.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Before we go on, obviously some members are concerned about the proposal. You'd need to find a reason which is going to withstand a potential appeal from the developer. So I'm going to ask you, as you continue to debate, to start thinking about what actual reason you're going to give for any motion to refuse. And well, next is Councillor Parish, please, then Cameron, then Taylor, then Furza.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm very concerned about this object, shall I say, being erected in this area. You've pointed out a football field and a playing area, and it's been said that the school is 175 metres away from the antennae.
The building is.
The building is, yes, that's what I'm asking you about, the building is. Now, the play area for the children, is that closer to this antennae?
Yes, where Norman's got the cursor there, that is the rugby field.
That's the rugby field for the school?
Yes,
right.
the football area and the playing equipment that Councillor Waite was referring to, I think is on the other side of Woodfield Road.
Okay, right. And obviously those are all houses around it which are very close to it. What concerns me too is the applicants have not really looked at alternative sites, and that's the reason I would give, because I think more sites should have been explored before submitting this application.
If I can answer that, Chair, I think it's important to stress that the applicants have done a site selection process. Now, I'll pick up, I was making notes as the speaker was talking, and he mentioned Mayburn Car Hire now being vacant. In the applicant's submission, Mayburn Car Hire was dismissed for there being insufficient space, not because it was occupied, and therefore, now it's vacant, they should revisit it. They have said there's insufficient space. They have assessed 11 other sites in the vicinity. Now, I agree that you can look at as many or as few sites as you choose, but I have to at this point remind members that Welsh Government planning advice is that authorities should not question the need for the telecommunication system that the proposed development is to support. So if they've identified a need in a location and they've identified a search area in their annual rollout plan, Welsh Government is very clear that it's not for the local planning authority to question the need for that development. So just please bear that in mind when you're carrying on your debate.
Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, well, I'm not sort of going to say anything against it, but I just wonder whether you could explain on the bottom of page 55 where the recommendation is that prior approval granted. Can you sort of explain what that means?
Yeah, if I can respond. Basically, the national planning, the legal position is that this mast actually doesn't need planning permission. It is permitted development, but part of the process for that is that telecommunication operators have to apply to the local planning authority as to whether or not the local planning authority wants to approve details of the siting and the external appearance. So they submitted the details to us. As a local planning authority, we undertook consultation, and in light of the concerns that were expressed, we took a view and we made a decision that prior approval was required for this installation. They therefore submitted the details for us to now consider that. But it is to consider the siting and the external appearance, not the principle of the development in the location.
Yes.
So can I assume then that because you're saying that, there is not really a planning reason that we can find that we could say that we don't approve of the actual siting?
You can refuse it on siting. That is a matter that you're being asked to consider, but you would have to be very clear on what the reason is for not siting it where the telecommunication operator wants it to go.
Sorry, I've called a few others before you again. Councillor Taylor.
Chair, I'm a little bit the same as the last councillor on page 55, and you've given some reasons, but it says in the bottom paragraph, to conclude, while the developer, did fail to adhere to the aspects of the operator's own code of conduct. That to me doesn't seem right, This is telling me that a developer fails to, uphold their own code of conduct, and leaves me a lot to think about.
Okay, can we perhaps have an explanation about whether that code of conduct has any statutory basis?
Thank you, Chair. I agree that in terms of the code of conduct, there was an expectation that the school would be consulted prior to submitting the details to us. Initially, we thought that wasn't the case, but it looks like the Director of Education has confirmed that they were approached. So I don't know why that information wasn't presented to us on application. We went back to them and asked them to do that exercise again, which they did. So they approached the school again after we've received the details, and we've had no response from the school to confirm whether they approve the application or not.
Okay, Councillor Furzy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned, obviously, as all the other members are, regarding the citing of this in relation to the school. But what baffles me is, the school have had plenty of opportunities to respond, object, or whatever they want to. And surely, if there was the slightest hint of any sort of danger to the children or anyone else in the locality, they would have been up in arms immediately. So, for me, I don't quite understand why that's as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
Two questions. One is obviously that school question, because that does sound very odd, and I'm wondering whether there's some form of miscommunication going on here. Maybe we need clarification in that situation, because following Councillor Furzy, it does sound very odd that maybe we need to seek clarification there, because this whole advice thing is very, very near a school, and it does seem odd. Number two, we noticed there's three other sites from which the current service is obviously being provided. Are those the same operator? I have to ask that question. And it says in their own guidance if they can double up on it or provide from that service. Obviously, currently, that's where it's been provided from. I need to know where that, in terms of that question. I'm very uncomfortable about this as well, because it seems inordinately near a school, and from what all this says here, I agree with other councillors on it personally.
Okay, do you want to respond to that, Claire?
Yeah, I'd have to be clear on which three installations you were referring to for me to check whether they were the same provider or not.
Yeah, the representation provided, we've got obviously a service being provided at the moment. People have identified the sites around here near, and I mean, what if we've got high-level sites? These things, obviously, if we've got them, I've noticed there's reference in all the applications to other masts around the place. They're providing a service at the moment. I mean, can we double up on it? I'm looking at. Once here, maybe I've taken the wrong ones here, but where are the services being provided for? Have you explored potential, if it's the same operator or other operators, where they could double up rather than causing this, which is obviously controversial? This is my line of thought on this one.
Again, with the submission, they've declared that they did check the mast register. They have checked the industry database for other suitable installations in the area. I mean, the map coordinates for this site have been on the provider's annual rollout plan for the last few years, with the exact site to be confirmed, which is obviously now what they're now doing. So it's been identified as a need in that location. And all I can do, I can't confirm one way or the other whether they're the same providers on these other installations, because I'm not altogether clear which three we're referring to. But all I can do is just reiterate the planning guidance is very clear. It is not for local planning authorities to question the need for the development. That is a matter for the Telecommunications Systems Code operator.
Councillor Powell.
Chair. Yeah, again, I've got concerns about this. Even though the school hasn't responded, the high number of petitioners suggests there's probably parents involved. But obviously, given what you said about looking for a planning reason, I'd be concerned about the height of the mast in relation to the existing street furniture. We heard the speaker say that the trees and existing poles are actually shorter than this mast will be. What ground, can you comment on that? Is there grounds there, perhaps, for us to look at reciting it?
Visual amenity and the impact of that in visual terms would be in a planning consideration, yes.
Councillor Seaborne.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could ask, has there been an ecological assessment done on the buildings that are there? I know that they are old buildings, the school is, and could we object to the application on the grounds of the aesthetics, interference issue, and the suggestion that the radio frequency coming from the tower could disturb the neighbouring bats and owls that may be within the area?
I'm sure you could, but in the absence of a professional ecologist's advice on that matter, I'd express caution on that approach. But that is something we could seek to get instruction from. But again, ordinarily, it's not a common objection from a planning point of view for telecommunications installations.
Well, with your indulgence, Chair, could we have a look at that, or get our ecologist to assess that?
There's a time consideration in all of this which we need to be aware of. We've only got 56 days from the 2nd of February, I think it was, to actually determine this application one way or another. Otherwise, it is deemed approved. So we haven't got a lot of time in which to, if you were thinking of deferring this until a future meeting, we haven't got a lot of time in that regard. So I'm not saying that can't happen, but it's not an easy option.
Well, can we get our bat controllers out tonight, Chair?
Sorry?
Well, couldn't we have a bat patrol tonight?
Sorry, if this will help a little bit in the absence of having that professional advice on hand, there was a National Radiological Protection Board report issued in 2005, which was basically a follow-up to the Stewart report, which more people are familiar with, in terms of further scrutiny of the health impact of telecommunications. And the report considered lots of different reports looking at different aspects and collated all that information together. And the report concluded that overall the reports acknowledged that exposure to low-level radio RF fields may cause a variety of subtle biological effects on cells, animals, which is why I mean, or human, particularly on brain activity during sleep, but the possibility of exposure causing adverse health impacts remains unproven. I don't know if that helps at all, but there's an animal reference in there.
Councillor Evans, and then...
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I say I'm surprised the ecologist wasn't approached with his comments in regard to this application. The other thing I wanted to dig down to a bit deeper is the, excuse the pun, the drainage officer's comment, suggesting that there's groundwater conditions may not be suitable and therefore commission a ground survey. Has that survey been carried out?
No, it hasn't. We brought the developer's attention to the drainage officer's comments about the condition of the ground underneath. They have commissioned a further ground survey works. I think it is in the report, and the results of that are not yet back, but the developer has confirmed if the results of those prove unsatisfactory from their point of view in terms of ground condition, then they wouldn't proceed with the installation in that location.
Personally, Chair, if I can come back in briefly, I would prefer the ground survey to come back before the decision is made.
Well, the same points I have to make as I made earlier, that we haven't got a lot of time in which to deal with this. So bear that in mind, please.
Yes, Chair. Once again, we've got to dump one of these things in a major area, built-up area, where there's a school, where there's playing fields, and we've had over 200 odd objections from the people of New Inn, and I find it, I find it hard to believe that we could put one of these things in that place. Like.
Well, yeah, it may be hard to believe, but the fact is we've got to have a reason which is acceptable and would withstand an appeal to Welsh ministers, because otherwise we face the prospect of the council suffering award of costs against it for the pursuit of that appeal. And the last mast, which we turned down several years ago, cost in the region of £100,000 to the ratepayer. So we're not going to take this lightly. We have to take this responsibly and come up with a reason which has a reasonable chance of not being overturned at appeal. And that's why I asked you earlier to start thinking in terms of, if you're minded not to approve this application, of reasons which actually will do the trick. Because if you don't want that mast to be there, there's no point giving reasons which are going to be overturned on appeal. All you'll do is make sure it does go there. So come up with the right reasons and we're okay. And if you can't, then the advice from the professionals who know about these issues is that you have to approve. So, back to you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Well, page 55 again, on the second paragraph, the last couple of lines, it says, crucially, there isn't any planning guidance or policy that prevents the siting of telecommunication close to schools. It says, provided that the necessary declarations been made. Has that been made?
Yes, it has. Again, I will quote directly from Welsh Government advice in Planning Policy Wales. With regard to the health implications, it is Welsh Government's view that if the development meets the International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection, ICNIRP guidelines, as expressed in the EU Council recommendation, which came following the Stewart report, then that's acceptable. It should not. It goes on to say it should not be necessary for a local planning authority in processing an application for planning permission or prior approval to consider further the health aspects and concerns. The application is accompanied by an ICNIRP declaration. That is one of the precautionary code of conduct things that were put in place, and local authorities shouldn't be entertaining applications without them. This application does have that safeguard, and as you can see from the Environmental Health Officer's comments, they've reaffirmed that position from a public health point of view.
Councillor Powell, then Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I was just saying I would move refusal then, based on what we said, on the grounds of the drainage issue and a visual amenity. And that we should vote on it. Yeah,
we're not going to leap to a swift vote on this. Councillor Evans, then Councillor
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity again of the officers, we've already been told there are 3 other masts already in the area. Are there grounds that this could be thrown out because of that reason?
My understanding is that the information about the 3 other masts in the area came from the objector rather than in the application.
That'll be substantiated by the officers, Chair.
Again, I can only reiterate that it's not our job to question the need for an installation in an area, and the extent of that search is done by the developer. I mean, these other 3 sites have been brought to our attention by the third parties, but that wasn't looked at by the developer, and we have to take that on face value as to why that wasn't within scope.
Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Chair. Could we not defer this and ask for an ecological assessment then with the bats and owls? If we was on a building application and we found a crested newt, then this would be turned down straight away. But because we are not going to look towards bats and owls, which are almost endangered species, why can't we do the same and ask for a deferment on this?
Well, I've already made the point about deferring. Unless we can deal with this within a reasonable timescale, we lose it by default, or it's granted by default. So I'm against the idea of deferring for those reasons. Councillor Powell has moved something, and what I'm going to suggest now is we have an adjournment for 10 minutes or so, in which all of those who are interested in supporting Councillor Powell's motion actually consider the best wording that might be appropriate for this committee to pursue. But don't forget, the advice is that there are certain aspects of this which you've referred to already in your debate, which are unacceptable for succeeding in withstanding an appeal. And there is no point whatsoever in putting forward reasons which the Welsh Government has already said are unacceptable reasons. So, unless anybody's got any brilliant ideas, we're going to stand adjourned until 5 o'clock. Nobody's got any brilliant ideas? Okay, adjourned.
And the absence of a ground condition survey, and I will allow the officers to word it appropriately.
Okay, so there's two items there which would be subject of potential appeal if the applicant appeals, and that would be visual amenity and ground drainage, but the wording to be prepared by officers to do it in the right sort of planning terms. Okay. So is that understood by everybody? That's been proposed by Councillor Parish? Yep, I'm just making sure everybody understood it before we went that far. Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Okay, it's seconded by Councillor Ashley. Are you ready to vote? So all those in favour of that motion, please show. All and that's 1, 2, 5, 9. 9 for, against is 3. Okay, so that's carried. Fine. Let's move on then, folks. You don't have to stay unless you want to. Okay. Okay. Item 4 then is proposed installation of a even bigger pole adjacent to the road in Pontypool. Norman will just explain what's going on there.
Thank you, Chair. Just a correction in the report. On page 14, at the top paragraph, we make reference to the fact that the site, that there was no evidence of pre-application consultation on this site. However, the applicant did send in a pre-application consultation just before the submission. That came in November. However, that was not responded to. However, the difference here is, whilst we, on the last application, we talked about a prior notification, because this mast is above 15 metres, it does require full planning permission. And as you see from the report, the position is on the approach to the roundabout at the southern end of Pontypool, behind Tesco's, and we are refusing it on highway grounds. That is the recommendation. And you'll see the objection from the highway officer. So the recommendation is for refusal on highway grounds due to the proximity to the A4043 and the resulting interference with maintenance and service vehicles obstructing the highway in a sensitive area. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Okay, do you want to debate that? No? Anybody prepared to put forward something? Councillor Ashley.
Accept the officer's very sensible recommendation and propose that we go straight.
Yeah. Look, sucking up to officers like that, they get
No.
No. Well, is that seconded? Yeah. So proposed by Councillor Ashley in wording which I will ask the clerk to moderate, and seconded by Councillor Parish. All those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 5 then is the new single-storey infant block extension to the south of the existing school buildings at Coed Junior Infant School. And you've got the plan up on the screen. Anything officers wish to add to that?
Just to make members aware of the proposed link between the existing school and the new extension. The application, when it first came into us, had a physical link extension joining the two buildings. There is an issue with there being an underground culvert along there, and so in order to make sure that there's no flood risk, the link has been removed from the application. The detail have it, but it's been shown as there will be a link there. But the detailed design of that has to be flood modelled and bits and pieces before we can agree it. So that is recommended of a condition that the actual detailed design of that be agreed with us. So the plans just show that there will be a link and not necessarily what form that link will take at this stage.
Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not against the child's education in any way, but as I stated before when this first came up after the fire, that these demountables will not be permanent and that a suitable school will be built for the pupils of Coed Junior School.
So, are you proposing approval?
Yes, I will approve it, Chair, as long as these are not made permanent.
Where are you reading that?
I'm not reading it, Chair. It was just that I made the statement at the last time that it came to planning after the fire, and that I don't want these demountables to become permanent.
I think that's historical, though. This is about providing permanent buildings in place of the temporary arrangements which have been made for the school because of the fire.
Can I just help? There is a condition 19 on the approval notice requiring those demountables to be removed when the new classrooms are constructed.
Okay, that's fine by me, Chair.
Okay, so will somebody move approval?
I will move
Unless
it then,
anybody
Chair.
wants to discuss it anymore.
I will move it, Chair, subject to all the conditions and the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Okay. So
And
that's
I
been-
was going to second that and agree with Phil that, and hear what the officer said there, which is good.
Okay. It's like deja vu. Good. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this subject to the conditions as listed underneath the recommendation. All those in favour, please show. That appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 6 is a smaller tower at Portnewydd, the Orange Communication Mast Estate Road. I assume the estate road is not called the Orange Communication Mast Estate Road, but just the estate road. Anyway, anything that we wish to say on that one before we throw it open to debate?
No, just to point out, it is a replacement mast for the existing one, which is in situ there, Chair. So and for members to note that the existing condition 3 requires the existing mast to be removed prior to the installation of the 12.5 metre mast 1 metre higher than currently exists.
Okay, would you like to look at that one? It's less prominent. Anybody prepared to move approval? Indeed you can, Councillor Waite. Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
Councillor Constant seconded it. Are you ready to vote? Show now. I didn't see nodding. All those in favour, please show. That's not quite unanimous. Councillor Evans didn't put his hand up. Did you? Oh, you put it down too quickly. Then we have... have I scrolled too far? There's another one in Portnewydd, isn't there? So item 7. This is also a replacement. So anything we want to add to that one? Do you want to know the height of this one?
Yeah, Chair, this is 15 metre high monopole to replace the existing 12 metre high mast.
Okay. Anybody wish to debate this one? Sure now? Okay. The recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions. Anybody prepared to move?
Yeah.
Councillor Cameron moves.
Yes,
Councillor Parris seconds. All ready to vote? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous too. And that concludes the application. Now, before you get up and rush away, there is a meeting planned for April, but not on the date which is in the council diary, i.e. I think the 11th of April, but instead it's proposed that it be on the 25th of April, Tuesday the 25th of April, in order to deal with a couple of items which hopefully will be ready for submission to Planning Committee by that time. So, are you happy with that? Jolly good. Put it in your diaries then, please, as at least provisional. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. Meeting closed.